So no further ado, over to Ben Mitchell, who's from Case, New Holland. I think is I'm not sure what the proper name of your business is, Ben.
Right.
But you're the guys who make New Holland tractors. You also, I think it's Case International, and make several other brands as well. But in amongst their portfolio of machinery, there is a methane tractor, and there's also a few other interesting things like a hydrogen tractor. To get hold of Ben, I managed to talk to the boss of, well, I emailed the boss of New Holland, and he graciously passed down the request through the process, and we've ended up with Ben, who is Australia's, the person who's responsible for the methane tractor concept in Australia. So it's a really nice sort of person to be talking to on this day. So over to you, Ben.
Well, yeah, thank you very much, John. I'll just have a crack at sharing my screen. Yeah.
Winner.
Now, has that worked?
Yep, that's good.
Sure has.
Excellent. Okay. Right, yeah. So thank you very much for the invitation. It's certainly an interesting topic. I unfortunately didn't jump on to Beyond Diesel 1. I was actually on the family farm out of reception that day, a few days off, so it's good to catch up now. I've certainly will be jumping on to the next one, that's for sure, because it's certainly an interesting thing. So basically, yeah, Ben Mitchell is my name. I'm a product segment manager at New Holland. Mixed farming and livestock for ANZ is my job title. Basically, that encompasses tractors from around 100 horsepower up to 300 horsepower. Those tractors obviously go on a variety of farms, and yeah, cover the Australian market, and also we have a distribution network in New Zealand as well. So it's interesting to I guess look at different. There's certainly a number of different farming practices across the country that vary greatly. So it's always good to talk to different people from different areas and get an idea of what's happening. So in my presentation today, I'll be covering off, I guess, we've got the methane tractor concept and reality that we've developed in New Holland, and also covers a bit, or lead in a bit with emissions and whatnot around diesel as well, because obviously at the moment diesel is the primary fuel, so there's a topic there to be covered as well.
Hey Ben, just to jump
Yep.
in for a sec, can you just talk a tiny bit slower? It's like the internet's struggling to get every word. So if you could just slow down a wee bit, I think that might help with the reception. So thanks.
No worries. Sorry about that. My father's an auctioneer, so I've been blessed with the speed, or cursed. Okay, next slide should now. So my agenda for today basically is to cover off New Holland. Who are we? We'll then look a bit at emission legislation and the environmental impacts. We'll then have our New Holland Clean Energy Leader strategy that we've employed since 2006. We then have, I'll cover off on our IVECO sister brand and the natural gas tractors the natural gas trucks that they have produced. We then dive into the lovely methane tractor prototype, and that's where we will discuss methane in relation to the emissions. We look at our energy independent farm, the concept behind that, and then we'll finish up with the actual methane powered tractor that will be in production. So New Holland is part of the CNH Industrial Company. It's the second largest manufacturer of agricultural machinery in the world. It has a revenue in US dollars of 30 billion a year. So we're a big player in the market. And you can see there we do have sister brands, so New Holland, Case H and Steyr, which is our European tractor brand. In the ag, we have New Holland Construction and Case Construction over to the side. FPT is our powertrain supplier, or our sister company within the group. And FPT produce over 500,000 engines per year. So FPT, it supplies the majority of the CNH goods, but also it'll also supply other earth-moving, other tractor, truck manufacturers as well, in marine. So FPT has been a big advantage for us to have our own in-house engine supplier. Then we have IVECO, which is the 5th largest manufacturer of commercial vehicles in the world and the leader in natural gas commercial vehicles. So that has certainly enabled us to really jump in with this METHANE tractor, because we've got the runs on the board with IVECO. And CNH Industrial as a company has been named 9 times, been named in the Sustainability Index leader in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. So certainly sustainability is a big part of our business and our mantra. So on itself, which is the company that I guess in Brandon, directly, we're a full line supplier. So basically, whether it be orchards to vineyards, mixed farming, hobby, lifestyle, broadacre, hay and harvest, we really do have equipment in all those fields. So again, the brand itself is quite a large player in the global market. So it's a lot for us to be able to leverage off when we're looking at new products. So basically, this slide covers off emission legislation. So this is some of the European legislation, and it also works in with the US. The US is the tier system, and Europe talk about the stage system. So this is a bit of a blend of both. So you can see in 1996 is when off-road emissions were reduced, and you can see on the white graph there, you've got particulate matter on the left and nitrous oxides there on the bottom, the index. So you can see when in 2002, Tier 2 was applied, and you can see that the particulate matter and NOx gases were certainly shrunk considerably. In 2006, Tier 3, they see back on the NOx, and then 2011, Tier 4A brought another big leap, and Tier 4A then transferred to Tier 4B, where you can see it basically just tightened up on the NOx gas, and now in 2019, Stage 5, which is the European terminology, has been applied. So basically, you can see to 1996 down to current day, it's a very small left-hand box there that's been reduced a mile. Of interest, Australia did not have a policy in place in regards to emissions off-road. So that graph there is not actually required in Australia. Off-road counts for about 3%.
Sorry, Ben, I'm just going to jump in. I'm just going to turn your video off because the audio is distorting. And when I turn your video off, it seems to work much better.
Okay, no worries. And here was me re-clicking that video thinking I was doing something wrong. It's probably a benefit my noggin's not up on screen anyway. So yeah, Australia do not have an off-road emission standard. So off-road engines count for 3% of all of on-road engines in Australia. And off-road engines produce 6% of national greenhouse gas emissions. So it's certainly a big polluter, or counts for a great deal of greenhouse gas emissions, but yet we're not bound by legislation, which is pretty crazy. And to be honest, it's a little bit embarrassing that we have China, Russia, India, South Africa, all of these countries that are minimum Tier 3 and are moving towards Tier 4, and we have nothing. So it's certainly interesting. I was over in China had our plant a few years ago, and it was, yeah, we're the odd ones out here in Australia and New Zealand without a legislation. So interesting times there, and hopefully that will be something will happen on that market one day. And just on emissions, there are different controls for emissions. So EGR, which is exhaust gas recirculation, is probably the first one that gets put on machines to bring them into Tier 3. And then the DPF, which is a diesel particulate filter, is a solution. And then SCR, which is selective catalytic reduction, which otherwise known as the AdBlue. So some manufacturers actually use EGR, DPF, and SCR on an engine or a mixture. So there's certainly many facets to abiding by those laws. And in the Australian market, we have Tier 2. When I say we, the industry, so New Holland and all our other competitors, they're a mixture of Tier 2 through to Stage 5 and everywhere in between. So it's a bit tricky as a purchaser. You really have to ask the question if you want to know what is the emission standard of my tractor that I'm purchasing. I'm just changing slides, it'll catch up.
Was it my turn for a question, Ben?
Yeah, fire away.
No, I thought we were doing a Slido after that slide.
Go.
Yep.
Okay.
So this is the one I want. Okay. So in one word, tell us what you think about emission controls on engines. Great, confusing, important, expensive. Lacking, behind. More coming from government. Important's getting a lot of hits. Overdue, complex but necessary, short-sighted, band-aid. That's great. Thanks, everyone. All right, I'll stop sharing again. Back to you, Ben.
So am I sharing still?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, interesting. Yeah, certainly it's I think confusing may have been one of those comments, and that's probably a very poignant one because yeah, it's certainly a mixed array, and until there's legislation, I guess it will continue to be confusing because it's inconsistent. I think it's probably another word I would put in there. Okay, so this slide, it's basically just explaining the whole well to tank or well to wheel theory. There's certainly many steps involved to getting a fossil fuel, producing it, transporting it, refining it, distributing it, etc. So there's many steps, and that obviously accounts to a large greenhouse gas emission component. Then we start looking at biodiesel, and then we have our natural gas and biomethane. So particularly looking at biomethane from liquid manure, you can actually see a negative impact because we're really utilising the right resources there. So this is an interesting idea behind the biomethane philosophy. Just a quick cover off. So New Holland basically went off on a clean energy leader strategy in 2006. So we are at the head of the emission, or at the head of the idea of lowering emissions, but also improving products to do better for the environment. So in 2007, we authorised all our engines in our tractors to be biodiesel compatible, and there are many guys that are using a percentage of biodiesel in their machines today. We then, in 2009, launched a hydrogen concept tractor. That particular concept tractor, I know hydrogen was discussed at the last on the last meeting here, on the last forum. We've actually parked that temporarily, the hydrogen concept, but basically what we found was the cost of the fuel cell and this packaging the tanks and batteries into a tractor was a bit tricky, and the autonomy as well. So when we compared that at a later date to our methane powered or natural gas powered tractor, the natural gas won out. So we have gone down a way there on hydrogen, and it's certainly not dead, but we've backed the horse of the methane for the time being. So in 2013 we launched our first methane prototype. Then 2015 our second generation prototype, which is much more of a working testing machine. And then in 2017 we launched the futuristic methane concept tractor.
Ben, Oscar asks, biomethane scope and scale and consistency quality standards, do we have major gaps in production and supply?
I think I was muted for a tick. For biomethane, so I think that'll probably be a really good, I think Fiona, who's on after me, will be great at answering that question. But I think we require 87% purity of the biomethane. So for sure, we'll need to have the right quality and the gaps in productivity, production and supply. I guess there's big gaps at the moment because it's not really there. From a scale point of view, I guess anecdotally or in theory, we've looked at in Europe on our test farm about a 300 head dairy should be able to power the tractor for the day. So that's in theory, of course, but that's about the scope, I guess. 300 head could potentially run the tractor self-sufficiently. So, and again, a lot more work ahead to get that into reality, I guess. Hopefully that helped. Yeah, so this slide, basically we look at IVECO. So IVECO have produced, our sister company produced 45,000 trucks running on natural gas. So natural gas is certainly not new in our company, but it is new to, I guess, to the ag segment to a point. But it has been around since 1996. So whilst it seems a bit weird talking about, you know, beyond diesel and being a futuristic fuel when it's been around for that long, but there's still, I guess, in Europe it's widely accepted. I think we're a bit behind down here, and again, that's obviously driven by lack of requirement, I believe, of the emission standards. So lots of machines there produced, and I guess within that time, you can see that we went from 120 kilometres. Was our target for our range, and now we're up to 1,600 kilometres on tanks or tanks of natural gas. So you can see it's certainly changed the way we've done business with our IVECO brand in Europe. And that's just another brief snapshot. You can see Euro 6 emission limits, which is beyond obviously stage 5. So Euro 6 is the outside grey area there, and you can see the Stralis, which is running the natural gas, is that little dark blue in the centre. So it is a long way below, a mile in front of the emission requirement for stage 6. So it's really a future-proof technology. As the standards get tighter over the coming years, natural gas is still a mile in front. So we had the runs on the board with IVECO. So we utilise their on-road engine and apply it to an off-road application. So in 2013, we launched our methane prototype test rig. Basically, you can see had tanks mounted under the cab and up beside the back pillars. Made it for quite a poor visibility machine. And it was only the original one only had a small 3-litre engine in it, so it was more of just to prove that the theory would work. And then we jumped into our second prototype in 2015, and that's where we fitted our 6-cylinder NEF engine into it and got our horsepower up higher, and then that become a true test rig there at 179 maximum horsepower. We ended up getting out of that tractor 145 rated. So the second generation spent a lot of time being tested on our future farm in Italy, which is a self-sufficient farm running the tractor on biomethane. So the actual engine itself, the bottom end basically is the structural block that we have in our tractor range. So we run a different block on this NF motor than we do in the IVECO truck. So it's a 6.7 litre machine, and it is spark ignition. So spark, instead of being a diesel injector and being compression ignition in a diesel, it is spark ignition. That particular engine runs in our tractors in Australia. We take it from 126 horsepower up to 300 in our diesel form. So you can see that particular engine's got a lot of scope for horsepower in diesel, and I expect it to be the similar in the methane. I think there's a big point at the bottom there, lower noise and vibration, 5 decibel quieter. That's a massive amount in an engine to be quieter. So you get rid of the diesel knock, the diesel rattle, but it's just a world apart in noise, to be honest.
Ben, Johnny asks, are you still getting the compression and hence efficiency when running a Spark FPT unit? I'm
not too sure off the top of my head of the compression ratio, but for sure it's still a high compression machine. And yeah, the torque curve and the power curve is certainly very, very similar. We're calling it identical, but it might be a percent here or there different, but the performance is likable to the diesel. So for sure it's doing what we want it to do. So here we just look at the after treatment system, and so you can see a bit. I'll move my mouse down there. In a stage 5 engine, we have our air filter and our turbo, and we have an exhaust flap. We have a dock and a mixer there. You can see that the AdBlue solution is injected. SCR chamber, and away you go. That's a simplified graph, I guess, of the dock, the AdBlue injector, and so on. Basically, we get rid of that system. So from the NOx down, and maybe just put in a 3-way catalyst. So it's a simpler way to treat the emissions with the methane machine. And then when you actually look at the emissions, if you cast your mind back to the white graph with the particulate matter and NOx on it, and we started off at the top right-hand corner, and stage 5 ended up as that little tiny box down the bottom left. That is a little tiny box. For stage 5, you can see the emissions now out of the methane. So it would be a speck on that previous graph. So you can see there some massive drops. 98% drop on particulate matter from stage 5. So if you can't even overlay that onto that tier 1 of 1996, you wouldn't be able to see it. So once we basically got the tractor working, we then had an idea of the energy independent farm. You can see there you have your anaerobic digester there, and again, some of our speakers later on will expand on that side of it. That's far more their area of expertise than mine. But the idea is to take a machine that has an energy independent farm to create a circular economy. And I guess in theory, farming, we have into the biomass goes into the digester, your manure, your food waste, and then out of that comes our biogas for your heat and electricity generation. Then obviously we compress it to a higher level again, and we can power our tractor and any other biomethane vehicle that that comes along in years to come. I guess that's the circle of operation. We have our crop, or we might feed a cow out of that crop. We'll produce our biomass into the digester. The gas is produced and upgrade it to methane. We can use it on farm in a diesel, in a natural gas generator, or in our tractor. We plant a crop, goes back around again. So it's that full circular economy to try and have a carbon negative footprint. So the standard tractor versus the methane tractor, you can see them that graph same. So same power, same torque, same durability, service intervals, but they're talking about a saving in running costs. So that's the idea behind that saving is if you're buying in Europe, you can pull up to a service station and buy natural gas off the grid at a cheaper rate. But I think that saving could also potentially increase if you're producing your own biomethane. I think, again, we've got some other speakers on that topic, but for sure it could be possible for a couple of farmers to band together. The capital cost of digesters, etc., isn't cheap, but if you band together into a community group or a farming co-op, the savings are exponential, really. And yeah, 50% drive by reduction in noise, which is just phenomenal, because the modern tractor nowadays is quiet, as we know anyway. So that 5 decibel equates to approximately 50%. You can see the overall emissions there. The idea is dropping by 80%. So a reality now in 2020 is the actual production version of the T6 methane tractor. So it's based on a current generation T6 electro command, the T6.180, which is 145 rated and 179 boosted. I guess some of the challenges or the realities of a natural gas tractor is the autonomy is about 3 to 4 hours of use. So it's certainly not the same as a diesel. So that will obviously limit its abilities to travel a long way from base. But certainly for a dairy farm or that intensive livestock operation, it should be within that range anyway. The gas is at 200 bar, so it's quite high pressure. In the picture there, we actually have a range extender tank at the front that's hooked onto a front linkage. That range extender can also be mounted on the rear 3-point linkage. So there's a series of tanks in there. It's dressed up to look a bit pretty in that covering, but there's just another high pressure vessels there. The fuel tank's been removed with high pressure vessels below. So that the tractor has connections at the front and rear, so there's potential as well to get tanks, additional tanks, and mount that on your implement. So if you've got a rotary hoe or a trailer or whatever you're doing in the paddock, you may be able to attach an extra gas tank or 3 and then extend the range of the machine as well. The rest of the tractor, to be honest, is a common tractor, so it has all the same features of a regular everyday tractor, just the spark ignition, gas engine, and the fuel tanks.
Ben,
Yep.
There's a question: will you supply a compression and storage unit for tractor refueling?
Good question, and that's a fair question. At this point, to be honest, at this point in time, we're not that far down the route, but we certainly will need to buddy up with some suppliers in Australia, and that's, I guess, part of my job description is to partner with some reputable suppliers, and I've made a few contacts already. Because yeah, you will need. It isn't just a matter of dropping the tractor off, see you later. It is a whole farm concept. So yes, we will do our due diligence and work out some reputable suppliers of that equipment, and I do believe it would have to be a package. We finance our tractors through our in-house financier, C&H Industrial Capital, and I imagine that we would try and bundle that together. So the tractor was officially launched at Agritechnica in November 2019. You can see it there on our stand. And the concept tractor, our futuristic concept tractor, was named the Sustainable Tractor of the Year, which is a new award now that's being handed out. So we took away the biscuits there, which was great news. So I guess it comes to now we've launched it in Europe at Agritechnica. I have ready for the market in 2022 with a little hashtag or a little star. To be fair, this was actually scheduled to be, it was promoted as being available in Europe 2020, but the COVID crisis in Europe has really, unfortunately, caused a great deal of angst in the actual market, in the TIV, in the profitability of farmers, and our plant where this is manufactured is in England. So it's put the skids under it, to be honest. So I anticipate 2022 to 2023 to being when we can get access to it. And certainly it'll be a low volume product, very specific product. It was scheduled for Europe, and given our unique position in the world of having no regulations on off-road emissions, we're probably the last country they can imagine that would put their hand up for this machine. But I've been on the bandwagon for a couple of years now, because I think whilst the government hasn't taken action, there are plenty of farmers, plenty of people out there like you on the call that actually are taking matters into their own hands and having a crack at new technology yourself. That's the conclusion of my slide pack.
Thanks, Ben. We've got a couple more questions. What is the potential range with extra tanks?
So I guess with the 3 to 4 hours of a standard tank, it really depends on how many extra tanks you can plug on. To be honest, we're still, I guess, I don't have enough answers on, I guess, a lot of these questions, because we have yet to actually make this into a production unit and have it on farm in, I guess, real world scenarios. I mean, fuel usage in a paddock can change from 15 litres an hour to 40 if you're deep ripping, or if you're rotary hoeing, or if you're using a loader. So it really depends on the application, on what you're doing, etc. But yeah, if you can keep stuffing extra tanks, I guess your mileage will just, or your hours operable will just keep increasing and increasing. But for sure, we need to do some more investigating on what use per hour you're doing.
Thanks, Ben. And another question is cost of the T6 in Australia. Are councils interested? Could be powered by sewage treatment plants.
So the cost is yet to be determined, because it's not a production machine yet, but no doubt it will be more expensive, and I would say a significant chunk more expensive than the current tractor, given it's a bespoke machine. So there will certainly be an increased capital cost, but that should be outweighed by, I guess, access to some on-farm capital, and I guess cheaper fuel, and if you're making your own fuel, cheaper again. So there was an on-farm idea of a calculator to be produced at some point where we can punch in some numbers and get a solution for you. Council is interested. Again, to be honest, this is about the first time anyone in Australia has spoken about this tractor is on today's call. So I've actually got a bulletin to email my dealers tonight on this tractor, so it's not been something that we've publicised, but I definitely think tractors will be interested, councils rather, will be interested in this tractor, and could be powered by sewage treatment plants. That is an absolutely excellent segue into our next guest speaker, Fiona, who has a lot more on that topic than I do. And yes is the answer to that.
Yep.
Thanks. We've just got one couple of questions that you had set up previously. So let me just share my screen. That one. I see a benefit in purchasing farm machinery that complies with higher level of emissions controls than currently legislated in Australia. Would you strongly agree, not bothered, disagree, or strongly disagree? If you could please put your option, select your option in your Slido.
And I put that down because it's an extremely interesting topic, because I know in my range I have, like I said, tier 3, T4, stage 5 tractors. So I see a bit of everything in my market, and yeah, you can have a good firm debate at a field day about the use of AdBlue in a tractor, and some guys think it's the worst thing in the world. Yeah, others not a problem, and see the efficiencies gained by having an after treatment system that's post engine. So yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Great, and just one more. What do you think about working with your neighbouring farms to produce biomethane gas to power trucks, tractors, or stationary engines? I think you can just, yes, just type in a response. Depends on costs and total savings. Makes sense. Great idea. Great, awesome would be okay. Everyone looks pretty positive. Would need significant coordination.
Yeah. Yes.
Great. Thanks for that, everyone.
Okay. We right, Tesh?